If you're a beginner or otherwise struggling with what ND, polarizer, filter kit, brand, or system to go with, especially that might fit your budget, I think this can help. And that's whether you shoot landscape photography or even a broader range of videography and even run and gun solo filmmaking. So I just took the K&F Concept Nano Xcel magnetic lens filters out into the field for some testing. And I was genuinely surprised with the results I got. Now, like many others, early in my creative journey, I purchased the Peter McKinnon Variable ND. I mean, they marketed the product well to people like me, and it's your kind of all-in-one ND that a lot of people I know, myself included, found themselves purchasing and using as an entry point into NDs. So for all intents and purposes, I want to position this review of the Nano Xcel series towards the beginner that might be unsure what system to start with and sort of, position it against something like that variable ND, the Peter McKinnon variable ND. It's not a side-by-side comparison in the traditional sense, but I have to compare my experience with the Nano Xcel against something I'm also familiar with using. And yes, I'm fully aware that regardless of what brand you go with, there are countless combinations of NDs, variable or fixed, circular polarizers, mist filters, effect filters to choose from. So the Nano Xcel set I'm using has the circular polarizer, an ND8, 3 stops, and an ND64, 6 stops. Full disclosure, this video is not sponsored by K&F, but they did send over the product for testing. They did not get input on this video's creation, revisions, and no money changed hands. But with that out of the way, let's jump into the testing and, kind of what we got in the field. Now, the first thing I noticed is that my lens hood still fits with the adapter ring by itself, but more importantly, with the circular polarizer and an ND and the magnetic lens cap on. This was actually huge, as the previous variable NDs and circular polarizers I've used by other brands were slightly bigger and negated the lens hood entirely, meaning, it went unused and had to be thrown in the bag and kind of waste space in there. The build quality is solid overall, not that I expected it to feel cheap or like plastic, and the carrying case is small enough to fit in your pocket or has a little belt loop Velcro attachment. So out of the box, everything feels solid. Switching filters feels good, is a fast and easy process, and the magnets feel strong, but not annoyingly so where they need to be pried off. And once you've used magnetic filters, I don't see any way to go back to using, threaded screw-on filters, especially when filter stacking. Now, depending on your use case, photography, videography, or run and gun solo filmmaking, this could be the biggest benefit or pain point. So in terms of speed, if you're doing longer exposure, higher aperture landscape photography, as an example, then filter stacking and switching filters is 100%, in my opinion, not an issue, because you're already spending time to compose the shot and get everything you need right. The extra few seconds to take a filter out of the case and switch it or stack it is a moot point. On the other hand, if you're moving quick with, let's say, videography in varying lighting conditions, sun to shade, etc., having variable ND functionality is a nice thing to have. But here's the kicker. The previous variable NDs that I mentioned, that I've used, and they weren't cheap, could not be stacked with other polarizers of the same brand. I mean, they physically could, but they would cast a noticeable, borderline unfixable greenish tint vignette around the edges of the frame. I did also notice that they created kind of unwanted color casts just by themselves too, without stacking. So you have to really pay attention to your white balance, especially in bright conditions in the field without a monitor. On the flip side, the Nano Xcels have no imperfections that I noticed when filter stacking the polarizers with the fixed NDs. This was huge and eliminated the stress of color imperfection. As a bonus, the ND8, or the 3-stop, worked really well with video during sunrise and sunset at my native ISOs of 640 and 800 on my FX3 and A7R5. And for midday bright harsh sun, the ND64, or the 6-stop, was the perfect amount at those same native ISOs. It really made my choice of fixed ND intentional, which is an aspect of my own photography, videography, and filmmaking I'm always trying to get better at. So the question becomes, do you want the slightly quicker functionality of a variable ND with noticeable color casting and an inability to stack that ND with a polarizer, or a slightly slower filter change with truer to life color? For me, I'm taking accurate color, a more intentional creative process, and the much cheaper option, but more on that later. So back to the videography and run and gun filmmaking use cases, I wanted to really see how the circular polarizer behaved in two specific scenarios. We know what it does to clouds and water, but I wanted to see what it does to just a plain old landscape on a hazy day. Or hazy sunset. Hazy, not from wildfires or anything like that, just generally hazy, humid, hot summer days, as it were. And it definitely helps, as the increased, contrast and saturation that you get with circular polarizers don't just apply to water, clouds, or non-metallic reflective surfaces. I mean, in my opinion, it works across the board to kind of cut through the image and cut through the haze. There you go, there's the whole package. Boom. 800 native ISO. That's beautiful. But the other scenario I've really been itching to try this on is with my car rig for driving shots, specifically shooting right through the windshield. I'll actually let the footage do the talking here. This is a must-have. So this is where these Nano Xcel filters shined and made them my go-to over a variable ND. Because again, whether it's landscape photography, changing conditions of videography, or run and gun filmmaking, I want to be able to ND and polarize at the same time in a ton of different settings without the fear of those unwanted, color casts. So overall, I was super stoked using these, and I'll sacrifice a few seconds to change a filter in the field for better color accuracy all day, every day. Full circle, I know K&F has a ton of different filters, variable NDs, fixed NDs, effect filters, polarizers, etc. Same with Polar Pro, Tiffin, and many more. But to look back at, the Peter McKinnon variable ND I bought that can't even be combined with a circular polarizer, compared to this Nano Xcel kit, it's literally a no-brainer. So if you're looking to get into long exposure landscape photography or automotive photography, or purchase your first ND system just for videography or run and gun filmmaking and not break the bank, then stamp of approval on these Nano Xcels. So I hope that gives you some insight if you're a beginner looking to buy your first ND, variable ND, fixed ND, circular polarizer, whatever. If you like the review, give it a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, and always helps the channel. Cheers, peace.